Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today we're going to be diving into a topic that's reshaping our world: Generative Artificial Intelligence, or Gen AI. Have you ever wondered how this cutting-edge technology is going to impact your work, society at large, or even the environment? Well, you're not alone. And to shed light on these pressing questions is Francesca Rossi. She's an IBM Fellow and AI Ethics Global Leader. And with the Association for Computing Machinery, ACM, Francesca, along with David Leslie, has crafted an eye-opening tech brief on Gen AI, revealing some startling insights like the fact that 80% of US workers are going to have their work significantly influenced by Gen AI. And it's not just about the workforce, though. There is a broader story here about the ethical considerations and environmental impacts of AI. So Francesca's expertise, especially in her role as IBM Fellow and AI Ethics Global Leader, that makes her the perfect guide to navigate these complex issues. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New York, where we're going to dive in and uncover the multifaceted world of Gen AI and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so hi Neil, thanks for having me. My name is Francesca Rossi. I work at IBM Research and I'm also the company AI Ethics Global Leader. So what does it mean? It means that I lead research projects in the research divisions about advancing AI, but I also co-lead the internal governance that IBM has put in place for AI ethics, which is our AI ethics board, together with the Chief Privacy and Trust Officer, Christina Montgomery. So this is the governance that, with a lot of evolution, we decided to put in place, and is a board that has representatives from all the divisions of the company and makes all the decisions. It's not an advisory board. It makes a decision about what technology can go out to our clients that is aligned to our principles for AI ethics. So it goes from discussing very high-level principles to very concrete actions to implement those principles and everything in between: education, diversity, risk assessment, and so on. So it covers all the aspects of AI ethics within the company.
And AI ethics is such a huge topic right now. And I think I should also highlight, you are also the co-author of ACM's tech brief on generative artificial intelligence. Again, huge topic, but just to set the scene for our conversation today, can you just tell everyone listening a little about that tech brief?
Sure. The tech brief came about because ACM wanted to publish. Tech briefs are very short documents that are written by ACM researchers. So ACM is the global research community for computer science professionals and researchers. And this is to expose researchers to policy considerations around the technology. And this is very important for AI, especially because AI at this point is so pervasive in our life, in our society, that is not a science and a technology anymore. It's a social science technology field of study. So it's very important that researchers that until a few years ago were only considering the technical aspect, they are also aware and they are also conscious about the social implications of what they're doing. And so that those tech briefs are about thinking about the technology and the impact that technology may have, positive and negative, and how to address with policies inside companies, but also in governments, in standards, and many other venues, how to address the possible risks of using this technology in our society.
And I'm curious, in your role as IBM's AI Ethics Global Leader, how is IBM approaching the development and implementation of ethical AI principles in its operations?
Yeah, so as I said, we have this internal governance that is centralized, which means that even though IBM is a global company, it has offices basically everywhere in the world, but the centralized governance on AI ethics has principles that are and concrete actions that are the same for wherever the company is operating. And for example, one thing that it does, this board, is to evaluate the risks of certain solutions based on AI that we deliver to our clients, to understand whether they are aligned to our principles. Principles are very high level. They're just the first step in every AI ethics journey that any organizations can go through. And they are not enough, of course, to tell developers or to tell everybody in the company what to do concretely in their everyday job. But they are a good starting point that sets the scenario about where you want to go. For example, our principles say that AI should be used to augment human intelligence and not replacing it. That doesn't mean that no task should be automated, of course, but it means that overall we should use this technology to really augment our capabilities, our intelligence, our creativity, and our ability of solving problems. Then the other principle is that data belongs to whoever created and generated this data rather than those that use it. So, for example, since IBM is a B2B, business-to-business kind of business model, no? So our clients are not individuals, our clients are other companies. So when we do something for a client, we don't reuse the insights and the data that we use for the client to another client. So that data remains there. And then the other principle is that the technology, including AI, should be explainable and transparent. So starting from these three principles, we went over time down to more concrete levels with some pillars. I say we focused on transparency, explainability, robustness, privacy, and so on. And now with the evolution of the technology, with the evolution and the use of generative AI, also on responsible content generation and also on societal impact explicitly. And then given these pillars, we do all our activities around educating developers and everybody else inside the company about these topics, but also, as I said, assessing the risk. So every team that wants to sign a deal with the client because they build a solution for the client has to pass through a process for evaluating the risk of that use case. And if needed, it gets discussed by the board with the team, and then the board decides. So, as I said, it's not an advisory board, but it's the board that says, yes, you can deliver that piece of technology, or you should make these changes or these additional tests and so on, or we don't see any way to make it aligned to our principles, so we cannot deliver that. And this is very important because it means that not only the board has this knowledge about and experience, but the whole company. So we have people in all the divisions that help understand every team what it means to build a solution that is aligned to our principles. So that's something, an important thing that we learned over the years is that, of course, when there is a problem with the technology, a technology company tends to say that the problem can be solved with additional technology. So there's a problem with AI, let's use AI to solve it. But this is in some sense, the easy part. The most complex part is really to change the frame of mind of the people building the technology. Because every programmer until a few years ago was used to think only, as I said, about the technology, not about the societal impact. So teams did not know what it means to be biased, to create discriminations because of bias in the data or in the development process. So we needed to help them understand via education, design thinking sessions, and so on, what all those things meant in their everyday job. So technology, but also all these other puzzle of different things to help people understand how to best use the technology. And then another thing, again, maybe it's obvious, but when I describe the AI ethics board, but that we don't have an AI ethics team. So we don't have a team that sits inside one division and reasons and makes those all conversations about AI ethics, because we think that would be difficult for the rest of the company to impact the whole other divisions in the rest of the company. So that's why we decided to put together a board with representatives from each division that are not just people, one person, random person from that division, but are people with decision power in that division. So that when the board makes decisions that impact a division, that person can go back home and say, okay, from now on, we need to do things that way. So that makes a company-wide approach rather than an individual team trying to reach the other division and may have an impact.
And another big topic we must discuss when talking about AI is bias, of course. So on that side of things, how are IBM addressing any potential biases in AI systems and any strategies in place to ensure fairness and inclusivity in those AI models?
Yes, of course, this is well-known. It's not now new because of generative AI. Also in traditional machine learning approaches, you had this bias, possible bias, which is to be mitigated because it could lead to machine learning solutions that could create discrimination between different groups of people. The bias can be in the training data, because training data may have some correlation between different variables that we don't see as human beings, but the technology and the machine learning training steps can find and then use when making decisions. But the bias can also be included in every step that the developers do in building, from the training to the testing and then everything else to the final solution. Because after all, these machines may be biased because we humans are biased, right? And we don't even know about it. We are unconsciously biased. We have so many different cognitive biases when we make decisions. So that's why we find these biases in the training set, but we also may find these biases in every decision that these developers do. So one important thing to do is to make the teams as diverse as possible. Different background, different gender, different knowledge, and so on, so that they can discover each other's biases when they make decisions in the team. But then also technology, like, for example, one thing that we develop is called AI Fairness 360, which is an entire toolkit that is able to detect and mitigate bias according to one of the many notion of fairness. Because bias is a very vague word, but there are many different decisions of fairness, what it means to be fair, what it means equity in a certain decision scenario. And for each decision scenario, you may find that one notion is more appropriate than another one. So one important thing is also to help developers understand that they need to consult with the client, whoever is going to use that AI system, to understand what's the right notion of fairness, and then mitigate bias, and that bias that is dangerous for achieving that notion of fairness specifically. So that is another thing that is less technical because it involves a multi-stakeholder consultation, but is very important to avoid bias. So this AI Fairness 360 has been built by IBM, but then has been donated to the Linux Foundation, so it's open source, as many AI tools that have been developed lately, and is available for everybody to use.
And of course, IBM is such a large organization. I'm curious, are there any examples you can share of how IBM's ethical AI practices have maybe influenced the AI industry and even set new standards for others to follow?
Yeah, well, one thing to say that, again, by releasing, for example, the AI Fairness 360, but we made other toolkits that are for explainability, for fairness, for robustness, so for privacy, and these are all released open source. So in general, there is a tendency now for releasing open source technology and toolkits to also address some risk of the technology, and that is really making this technology, first of all, more accessible to everybody, even academia, for example, that has less resources than companies, but also more easily scrutinizable in terms of the risk that they may have or the limitation that they may have. And this is very important to advance AI in the right way and to avoid really the power imbalance that there can be in those that have the resources to build the tools and to use it and those that do not have it. So larger accessibility, larger scrutiny, which accelerates the advancement of AI capabilities, but also accelerates the understanding and advancement of mitigations of its risks.
And if we were to look at the broader landscape of generative AI, are there any other ethical or society challenge that you foresee becoming more prominent in the next few years ahead? Because it's evolving at such a rapid speed. But as someone right in the heart of this space, I'm curious what you see on the horizon.
Well, with generative AI, of course, the game changer is that now AI not only can interpret well some content like images or text, but it can also generate this content. And that, of course, has to be understood very well. What are the capabilities and limitations in that space? Because, for example, we know that as of now, these generative AI systems are sometimes not very good at recognizing what is false and what is true. So they can generate content that is not true. So the so-called hallucinations, right? And they can also generate content that is not aligned to certain values. And so how do you make this value aligned in the actions that they make, such as generating content? So, for example, they can generate content that is discriminative between different groups of people, or that's toxic, offensive. So how do you make sure that this does not happen? So the fact that they can generate misinformation or information that is not true is certainly something to be taken care of very carefully. And in fact, some of the well-known examples of even people that use this generative AI system without being aware of these limitations, the fact that they could generate things that are not true, like the New York lawyer that used it to generate some precedents that were all made up and brought them to court, damaging, of course, his own credibility and getting a fine. But in general, this danger of not being aware that there are these risks and then possibly disseminating this false information. Another, of course, risk is, of course, related to deep fakes. Of course, these systems are very good at generating images or videos that are almost indistinguishable from being the real ones. So we have to really understand how to tackle those possible situations with policies, with best practices, with many other means, even laws, of course, that can help recognize which image, for example, is generated by AI and which is not, and also avoid this spread of deepfakes. There is also the additional challenge in assigning responsibilities when things don't go in the ideal way, because with the generative AI that systems are used as so-called foundation models. So you can build this foundation model, meaning that this model can generate language, for example, like GPT-4, but then you can use it to build many downstream models. So now you have a development life cycle and step, which is very long, from those that train and test the foundation model, then those that further train to build one downstream model and then test it and then build a solution. So in all these actors that play a role, it's not that easy to understand if something goes wrong in the final downstream model, how to assign responsibility. So that's also a topic for policy considerations. And another thing, of course, is that it's clear at this point that some regulation is needed. But I think that it's important that the regulation or the laws, like for example, the very soon to be approved European AI Act, should focus not, in my view, not on the technology itself, not on the AI technique that is being used to build a solution, but rather on the uses of that technology. So what is risky is some uses, because, again, being generative AI usable for many different purposes, some of them may be very high risk, but some others may be very mundane and very low risk, like deciding which recommendation of which movie to watch on Netflix has a different level of risk than a recommendation on which therapy to use for a patient. And they can be built out of the same technique and the same foundation model. So that, to me, tells me that the regulation should focus on the uses rather than on the upstream technology. So there are these additional challenges related to what the technology is capable of, but also the limitations related to the limitations of the technology that are still there, and also the policy challenges that with this new wave of AI are becoming more complex.
So many great points in there. And before you came on the podcast today, I was reading about teenagers turning to AI bots for therapy. There's a load of conversations around that. And as you said there, hallucinations, deep fakes, responsibility, accountability, such huge topics in their own right, each one of those. So for people listening in the business and tech community and policymakers, what should they be doing to ensure responsible advancements in deployment of generative AI? Is there anything that they should be doing now, do you think?
Yes, definitely. For example, one thing that IBM recently released is this new platform called watsonx. And this is a platform to help our clients build an AI solution. And what is important is that this platform has three components. One is called the watsonx.data, because of course, data in every machine learning approaches are a very important ingredient. How you curate the data, you collect the data, you test the data, and so on. Then the second component is called watsonx.ai, and this is where you build actually the machine learning approach and you build a solution. And the third component, which I think is the most innovative and important thing to say here, is called the watsonx.governance. And that means, and this is where we put everything that we learned about AI ethics. So not only you need to collect data and then train your system and build a solution. This is not enough. It's important that the governance is as important as the other two pieces. So it's not the AI ethics and mitigation of these risks should be embedded by design into developing an AI solution. It should not be an additional thing to be done if there is time, nice to have, let's say. But no, it should be an integral part, just like the data and just like building the AI solution. So that's a complete change of mind in developing and building AI solution that businesses should consider. Another thing that businesses should consider is that sometimes they see AI ethics and all the steps that are added because of these AI ethics, like bias testing, mitigation, and so on. They see them as slowing down making money, okay? You're slowing down delivering things to some client because of this additional test and so on. But I think that this is a very short-sighted. I think that it should be considered not as a slowing down, but as in accelerating the path to the right kind of innovation. So the correct and the responsible way of innovating. There is no other innovation. The innovation has to be responsible. Otherwise, it's going to generate all sorts of chaos and damages to many actors in the society. So to see AI ethics not as something that goes in a different direction from profit, but goes in the same direction to get profit from the right kind of innovation. And we have seen from some recent studies that companies that embrace that kind of attitude are actually more successful than the other ones that insist in not trying to do some shortcuts around the mitigation of the risks.
And the speed of technological change continues to race forward at breakneck speed, but there's also a realization that it possibly will never move this slow again, which can feel incredibly daunting and overwhelming for many business leaders. So how can organizations and individuals alike better stay informed and keep educated about things like the ethical implications of rapidly evolving AI technologies? And what role do you see yourselves at IBM playing in that educational aspect?
Sure. So, we develop a lot of educational materials internal at IBM, but also externally. For example, we work with Coursera to develop modules for educating about AI ethics and about specific things like explainability, robustness, transparency, and so on. But also recently in this Watson.x governance, we included an atlas, we call it the risk atlas, where we have a whole taxonomy of risks that current AI, including generative AI, can bring about when building a solution based on that AI. Risks that have to do with the input data, the training data, or the input, the prompts, or that have to do with the generation of content. The whole table that is freely available for everybody, but then we transform this table of risk, and each risk has a definition of the risk, where it can occur, why is it this important, examples of real life situations where that risk really shows that it can be dangerous. So the whole information is then being transformed into an online table that clients can search on the web, considering what are the risks related to content generation, what are all possible risks, where can I find biases in AI. So asking questions and then getting information from this taxonomy of risk. And that, I think, is very important for awareness, because again, many things don't go well because AI is not used appropriately, meaning that it's used without being aware of its current limitations and risks.
And if we look on our news feeds at the moment, the more we scroll, especially around AI, about AI stories, there's just so much concern and warnings of tech dystopias in the future. So I'd love to try and restore the balance in the universe a little. What makes you hopeful about the future? Because I think it'd be great to hear more positive stories of what the future of AI and society could look like if we get it right and work together to get it right.
Right, that's the point, that we have to work together. So I think I am optimistic that first of all, because I've seen in the last, let's say, 10 years that like a small group of people thinking about what is this AI ethics, what does it mean, and so on. Now it's everywhere, right? So the awareness has grown enormously, and not just the awareness, but also the concrete actions inside the various actors. So that makes me optimistic just by looking at what happens in the past few years. But for the future, I think what we really need to work together. And it needs to be intentional. It cannot be a passive approach where we wait for the problems to come and then we put some patch. It has to be really proactive and intentional and collaborative. So that's why I think this open source tendency or open innovation ecosystem is very important, so that everybody, not just those that have enough resources to participate in the AI revolution, should be able to bring their talent to advance AI and also advance the responsible uses of AI. So again, the actors is everybody that has to be involved. Companies, of course, have an important role to play, but also governments, also standard bodies, also academia, also educators for the next generation that will build the AI system and use them, but also each one of us in our own individual life. We need to think carefully about using technology, for example, in the most responsible way, and thinking about the implication of the technology in our life.
Wow, I think there are so many light bulb moments going off around the world, people listening to you there. There's so much gold in your answers, and I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me and share some of your insights today. But although this is a tech podcast, I always like to find out a little bit more about my guests and explore the human element a little bit more. And you've had a hugely successful career, but none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way. So I'm curious, from a human aspect of our conversation today, is there a particular person that you're grateful towards, maybe saw something in you, invested a little time in you, or helped you get you where you are today, that we can give a little shout out, a little thank you to today?
Well, of course, my parents played a big role. When I decided to study computer science, the women are a small minority, but at that time they were really a small minority. And so the fact that they supported me in starting this journey in computer science, which at that time people didn't even know what it was. Science of information, it was called my curriculum of studies. What does it mean? Some people thought that it was related to journalism, science of information. So it was really a time where I was surprised that now I'm surprised that they were able to support me and see that I had enthusiasm, a passion for that. And I hope that everybody can see in their kids and let them follow their passion. So that definitely played an important role for me in doing something that I really liked. Not because that study would bring to some more money or more opportunity for finding a job, because at that time they didn't even know about this computer science domain, but because they saw that I could explore my curiosity and my passion in doing that. So that really, I have to thank them.
Oh, what a beautiful way to end the podcast today. But before I do let you go, of course, yourself, David Leslie, and ACM, the Association for Computing Machinery, you recently published this TechBrief on generative intelligence, revealing that an estimated 80% of US workers alone will have at least 10% of their work affected by generative AI. And that brief also underscores the environmental impact of generative AI technologies, and an issue that companies can no longer choose to overlook. So for anyone listening that would like to check that TechBrief out, find out more information about you, the work that you've done with David there, is there any way you'd like to point everyone listening?
Yeah, well, of course, people can find me on social media, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on X. They can find information about what I do at IBM in the IBM AI Ethics website. And then they find the generative AI tech briefs and many other tech briefs that are as interesting and important in the ACM website.
Well, I'll get all those links added so people can find that nice and easily. And we've covered so much today, from the why an AI policy should incorporate end-to-end governance approaches that address risks by design and regulate all stages of the design to deployment lifecycle of AI products, and also the governance mechanisms needed for Gen AI technologies, how they must address the entirety of their complex supply chains, not to mention accountability, responsibility. We could talk for another hour on this, so I'd love to stay in touch with you and get you back on later in the year, see how this world's evolving. But more than anything else, thank you, Francesca, for sharing your insights today.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for having me.
So as we conclude today's episode of Tech Talks Daily, I want to thank Francesca Rossi for joining us, sharing her invaluable insights into the world of generative artificial intelligence. It's been a fascinating journey exploring the various aspects of how it could shape our future, from understanding its impact on the workforce to grappling with the ethical and environmental ramifications. I think it's clear that this technology is not just a tool. It's a transformative force, a force that requires careful consideration and responsible handling. Otherwise, we're like children, unwittingly playing with something dangerous without realising the ramifications of it. And I think Francesca's expertise has undoubtedly shed light on the importance of comprehensive governance and ethical frameworks in the AI landscape. But hey, this is something we could talk about for hours, and I'm sure we've missed lots in our conversation that you might have wanted us to talk about. Maybe you've got other points that you would like to add to the conversation. Please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilC.Hughes. I will leave it up to you. You can either send me a DM, send me an email, send me a voice note, or you can sit down with me on the podcast and share your viewpoints. Whatever is easiest for you. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. But more than anything, just thank you, each and every one of you, for tuning in and engaging with the podcast on such a thought-provoking topic. I am Neil C. Hughes. This has been Tech Talks Daily, where every day we explore the intersection of technology and real-world solutions. So please, stay tuned for more enlightening conversations just like this, as we will continue to delve into the heart of today's tech innovations. But I'm starting to ramble now. What I'm trying to say is, I'll speak to you all bright and early tomorrow.